Have you ever played a game and thought, wait, why did the devs do this? This makes no sense, there's such an easy fix here. Maybe it's a boss with a hitbox that clearly doesn't match the visuals of its accompanying attack, an area that the game really shouldn't have let you access, or a respawn point that's in a totally different zip code than the boss that sent you there. Moments like these present a question: can you fix these games? And if the answer is yes, why don't the devs do it? Well, I think I have an idea why. It's because, regardless of how obvious these solutions may seem and how much the devs want to implement them, it's probably a bad idea. Let me explain. There are an endless number of reasons Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom succeeded as much as they did, but nothing in those games is more important than freedom. In fact, we're not even supposed to be here. Where is here exactly? Well, depending on your criteria, this is the 5th dungeon out of 7 in the game. At this point, I have done one of these dungeons. Now, regardless of whether or not you count this as a dungeon, it does have some pretty substantial lore reveals. However, when I first entered this area, I didn't know that. That's a whole story by itself, and we'll come back to it later, so let's toss it in a folder for now. The reveals in this dungeon completely recontextualize the rest of the story. There was this war against Ganondorf in the past. The ending of this war is mostly unknown, and it's one of the larger mysteries in the game. This dungeon explains that ending. So funny enough, explicitly because of the freedom available to the player, it's almost like the game spoils itself. If you do this dungeon early, you've taken an event that you weren't supposed to see until around here, and moved it all the way up to here. This is a problem for reasons I'm gonna assume are pretty obvious. Thankfully, the solution is simple: remove some of the player's freedom. If they reach this dungeon early, just go, sorry, you can't go here, and kick them out. A quick and easy fix that definitely won't cause any unforeseen negative repercussions. Surely this isn't foreshadowing for— take a look at this. It's for this reason that a lot of people believe Expedition 33 fixed turn-based combat. Now, ignoring the fact that it's not the first game to do this, or the second, or third, or you get it, what makes the combat of this game so great? How does it fix turn-based combat? Well, let's take a closer look. The biggest problem with turn-based combat is the fact that you have to sit there and watch things play out. You can't react to things in real time and prevent them with the pure skill that you've acquired from thousands of hours of Souls-likes. Expedition 33 aimed to fix that. With the ability to dodge and parry, you gain more direct control over how things will play out. Thanks to this, when you lose, it's not the fault of bad RNG or a missed attack at the wrong moment. Instead, it's simply a matter of you not playing well enough. Now, I know those of you who have been playing turn-based games for years are losing your minds right now, but just let me cook for a second. I promise I'm going to address the thing you've been yelling at your screen. Not only does this dodging and parrying system add a level of control to the combat, it also adds a game of risk-reward. Parries are harder to time than dodges. If you do successfully parry though, you get a cool counterattack. You parry instead of dodge and risk a higher chance of getting hit for the reward of more damage. So Expedition 33 fixes turn-based combat by, well, making it less turn-based, to put it simply. A lesser known fact about Expedition 33 is that the game takes place in Argentina. What? What do you mean it takes place in France? No, they've got to be in Argentina. Just look at Gustav's IP address. Wait, you're telling me he's in France, but he's able to hide his IP address, thereby preventing him from getting easily targeted by DDoS attempts thanks to today's partner NordVPN? Well, that's oddly specific. Anyway, the characters of Expedition 33 might not have to worry about their cybersecurity, but you do. The internet can be pretty stressful, and it's easy to quickly get overwhelmed by the threats that you have to be aware of. I mean, all it takes is a slightly convincing website to lose incredibly valuable information. Thankfully, that's the first benefit of NordVPN. Thanks to its Threat Protection Pro, Nord will automatically detect these fake web pages and warn you in advance before you have the chance to get scammed. But that's not all it does. You see, Nord protects you from phishing scams as well. Let's say you let your guard down for a moment and click on a link from an email that just so happened to lead to a phishing site. Nord will automatically scan that site and block it before it gets the chance to do any harm. Nord takes things a step further by even allowing you to run potentially perilous executables in the cloud to safely confirm whether or not they're dangerous at no risk to your device. It's thanks to Nord's Threat Protection Pro that it's not just the best VPN on the market, it's an excellent way to help keep yourself safe online. Plus, by using my exclusive creator deal at nordvpn.com/mhswoocer, you can get 4 bonus months on top of your 2-year plan. And hey, if you don't like it, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee. So go check out NordVPN at nordvpn.com/mhswoocer. That's nordvpn.com/mhswoocer. As you may have already guessed, both of these solutions come with something that's central to the entire discussion. Alright, let's open up that folder from oh, sorry, that's the make sure you don't miss a great video folder, my bad. Here we go. So, when I first played Tears of the Kingdom, I saw this Sky Island archipelago. It was in a perpetual thundercloud, but that wasn't gonna stop me. I knew there had to be something cool in there. So I took a detour and flew around only to quickly realize that this was no mere downpour. It was a spiraling storm so severe simply seeing centimeters in front of me felt frighteningly far-fetched. I began to wonder how I'd get out of here. It had been so long that I had started to forget the mental map that I'd sketched. I got lost, okay? After wandering for a while, I decided that even if there was something in here, it wasn't worth finding. All I wanted to do now was leave, but considering the conditions, that wasn't exactly easy. I stumbled around, eventually jumping off whatever cliff I could find, hoping that I would exit the cloud only to land on yet another island. Eventually I stumbled into a hole and figured I was cooked, when suddenly the light of a shrine broke through the storm and I thought, oh, this is perfect, I can fast travel out of here now. Directly next to that shrine though, was a door. I mean, you know I have to... Okay, that's fair. It was here that I knew that I was probably somewhere I wasn't supposed to be, and yet part of me had to know what was back there. It's like when you open up just a bit of the wrapping on a present, you don't need to see the whole thing, just a glimpse of what's in store will be enough. Luckily, I barely had enough orbs of light to get an extra heart. I tried the door again, and... much to my surprise, it actually worked. Now, it's right here that I probably should have turned around. However, at this point, I didn't even care about spoilers. I had to see this through to the end because this was an adventure. This entire sequence from my arrival at the archipelago to the end of this dungeon is one of my favorite moments in gaming. It's a memory that I'll treasure for a long time purely because of how authentic it was. I wasn't told to go here, I wasn't pushed in this direction. I saw a cool thing, thought I want to see what's up there, and found this talking mask that gave me a plane that I used to fly to a secret entrance of a massive underground factory. And all of that was just to start the dungeon. This is the type of thing that I dreamt of when I imagined an open world Zelda game. It's also the kind of thing that I wanted to happen for most dungeons in these games, but that's a whole different can of worms. The point is, none of this would have been possible if the game restricted my freedom. If I reached that door and they didn't let me go through, I would have been robbed of this magical experience. Sure, I hurt the story for myself, but if that's the cost of such a one-of-a-kind adventure, it's a price I'm willing to pay. If you have eyes, you can probably tell that did not hit me. I mean, we can even zoom in and take a closer look. Here's where I get hit, and here's the attack. That's about as clear as it gets. Unfortunately, the ref didn't see that, and now half of my health is gone. So let me ask you a question. If we change the hitbox from this to this, would that make the game better or worse? If you've been paying attention for the past 5 minutes, you probably already know this is a bit of a trick question. But lucky for us, I actually have a direct example of this happening and the strange consequences that come with it. Monster Hunter World did a lot right. A stat that I love to cite is that more people played World and Rise than every single previous Monster Hunter game combined. Hang on a second, is that not crazy to you? People bring up the success of these games a lot, but I rarely see anyone talk about how monumental that gap is, and it kind of explains a lot of the community discourse. I don't know, that's a topic for another time. I think the stat is insane. Anyway, it would be no exaggeration at all to say that World made the series mainstream, and I think a majority of that success can be attributed to the game's overall quality of life and refinement. This is where we can go back to those hitboxes from earlier. Check out that very same attack in World and in the previous game, Generations Ultimate. Notice how in this game you can roll right under that attack like a scene out of an anime or a movie. It looks super smooth and it feels great when you pull it off. Not only is this hitbox more accurate, it also allows you to stay close to the monster and keep up the pressure without having to retreat back anytime it does certain attacks like this. It's not just these attacks though. There's chip damage when a lot of the monsters reposition or move. This isn't significant, hence the chip part, but it can knock you down a bit and lead to more dangerous follow-ups. This isn't totally removed in World, it's just substantially dialed back. You no longer have a ton of robotic micro adjustments that gradually chip away at your health all because you chose to stand next to the thing that the game told you to hit. The last thing is a bit more of a general idea than a single mechanic. It's that quality of life that I mentioned earlier. World introduces fast travel in maps, a camp to restock your items mid-hunt, and even the ability to move around or cancel your heals instead of getting stuck in this slow animation. These changes all seem positive at a glance, and honestly I don't mind them at all. In fact, I think they're cool. Although I would be lying if I said something didn't feel a bit off about modern Monster Hunter games, and after returning to the old generation, I quickly realized that was a direct result of those quality of life changes. Believe it or not, that includes the hitboxes. Stick with me here, I promise this sounds crazy, but just hear me out. Initially, I was of the belief that the modern games felt off due to their lack of difficulty. However, that's not really the case. Sure, they're a bit easier, but if you can honestly sit here and tell me that you've never struggled with the later bosses in these two games, then you're either lying or you haven't seen the sun in a concerning amount of time. Granted, neither have I, but that's besides the point. The difficulty wasn't the problem, it was how that difficulty was implemented that made the older games feel different. Consider the following. The more accurate hitboxes are also smaller. You can roll under them and that's great, but it also means that you have a more reliable escape option. Due to the hitboxes being so large that they could hit you from a different time zone, you had to play more carefully and less reactively. The game was less about countering whatever move the monster made in that moment and more about understanding what its options were and staying just out of range. There was a much more methodical feel to the combat thanks to this. Enhancing this more calculated nature is the limit on healing. In World and every Monster Hunter game after it, you have infinite heals. As long as you don't die or run down the comically long timer of nearly an hour, you can get hit as much as you want. You no longer had to ration your resources. If you got hit too many times and ran out of potions, you could simply leave the fight, head back to camp, restock, and carry on like nothing happened. Lastly, there's that chip damage. This mechanic is incredibly annoying, and just to be clear, I do not like it. However, there's a positive here as well. The chip damage, much like the oversized hitboxes, force the player to more meticulously consider their positioning when they fight the monster. Sure, the legs are generally going to be safer than the head, but standing by the monster's legs might lead to you taking smaller hits from that chip damage. All of this works together to create one central idea. In post-world games, you don't have to respect the monsters nearly as much as you did in pre-world games. The monsters on a fundamental level just aren't as threatening as they used to be. So is that a bad thing? Well, as you might expect, I think the answer is going to depend on who you ask. Some people prefer that more methodical style, while just as many people will try it exactly once and swear to never launch the game again. Much like Breath of the Wild and Expedition 33, these changes aren't perfect. I personally like them, and I do think they're a fair bit less divisive than the previous examples, but they're still not quite what I'm looking for. I still can't confidently say that this fixes a game. I feel like we're getting close though. It's getting close. That's it. In certain challenging games like Dark Souls and Hollow Knight, each time you die to a boss, you respawn at a checkpoint in a different zip code and are forced to run for around a minute before you get the chance to refight them. This is seemingly a pure waste of time, and games like Elden Ring and Ender Magnolia fix this by implementing the groundbreaking, outstandingly complex, and genius solution of moving the checkpoint here instead of here. That is an undeniable upgrade. That's the simple and straightforward fix we've been so desperate to find. When I first played Elden Ring and activated that grace site before the first big story boss, it gave me this surreal feeling. I almost felt like I was cheating. Like, is the game really gonna let me do this? I can just run right back in? And yeah, there are no strings attached. I barely even noticed it in Ender Magnolia, but at some point around 30% of the way through, it hit me that I hadn't run back to a boss a single time. It was absolutely wonderful, and I hope more games do this in the future. Yet there was still an unanswered question, a loose thread as it were. If such a change was so easy to make, and if it really is a pure objective upgrade, then why exactly wasn't it in every Dark Souls game after the first one, or even Demon Souls? Why do so many games still follow this same trend? It's easy to say that they do it because Dark Souls does, and that's definitely true in at least a few cases, but I think the answer is slightly more complicated. The reality is that this probably isn't the fix we've been looking for. It's yet another trade-off. Those runbacks add a few things to the game, each of which are not purely good or bad. First, they force you to take a moment to rest and reset before getting back into the fight that you just lost. Depending on the person, this can act as a moment to collect and relax instead of being full focus locked in all the time. Second, they add stakes. The fights are inherently more intense and stressful when you know that there's something to lose. Failing to defeat this boss doesn't merely mean having to try again, it also means running a small marathon and fighting some throwaway enemies. In this way, the boss almost becomes more threatening, and similar to the Monster Hunter example from earlier, thanks to these runbacks, the boss demands more respect. So even here, with such a small and simple change, there are still consequences. Granted, these consequences are extremely subjective, not just based on the person, but the game and even the boss, but they do still exist. Alright, so what's the solution then? Is it really impossible to fix a game? Well, here's my theory, and remember, I'm not a game designer. I simply play a lot of games and think about them far too much, so take this with not just a grain of salt, but perhaps the entire Pacific Ocean. Every choice made when designing a game after the basic fundamentals of, does this game run correctly, is a balancing act. Choosing to make an action game instead of a turn-based game, deciding when and where the player can obtain the strongest gear, even the colors of the characters, all of these choices have benefits and drawbacks. I'm serious about that last one too. Look, watch this. These are 3 characters from Expedition 33. Notice how similar their color schemes are? In fact, if I were to ask you to identify one of them at a glance in, I don't know, a chaotic, relatively dark environment where a lot of things are happening at once, you might struggle to do it. And I think that's intentional. Their outfits are supposed to feel similar, unremarkable, and most importantly, expendable. That perfectly represents their place in this world. Expedition 33 isn't some special chosen party of exceptional individuals. No, it's just the next group of people who are setting out on this adventure that hundreds before them have gone on, all of whom failed. They're not supposed to look like the vibrant, super saturated designs of Metaphor that are practically yelling at you to pay attention to them. Those designs are perfect since that's what Metaphor is about. You're a group of underdogs and relative nobodies trying to become the ruler of an entire country. These characters want to stand out, and their designs reflect that idea. But notice how neither of these designs are bad. They both just fit their game and the story that they're trying to tell. My guess for the answer to that initial question is that the devs did try to fix their games. They did implement these solutions that we often think of when playing them, yet these solutions solutions came with some unintended consequences, and so they decided that while it wasn't perfect, they'd rather have these drawbacks than the alternative. The decisions made and the ideas implemented came at a cost, an obvious cost, but for the experience they were trying to create, it was a price they were willing to pay. Now, if you think these trade-offs are making games worse, you need to check out this video because you might not understand what's happening to games.